All right, let's get right into this. We're looking at a really groundbreaking study that gives us this incredible peek deep inside the brain to understand what happens after a trauma. And what it's found is, well, it's pretty astonishing. It turns out that different kinds of trauma don't just feel different, they actually leave their own unique, readable fingerprints on our brain's wiring. And that, right there, is the central mystery we're trying to solve. I mean, how can two people go through something very similar, a similar traumatic event, and one person comes out with this constant, high-alert vigilance, while the other feels, well, emotionally numb, totally detached, almost like they're just watching their own life on a screen? It's a question that's really stumped clinicians for a long, long time. So, to get to the bottom of this, you first have to understand that post-traumatic stress isn't just one single thing. Clinically speaking, it shows up in at least two very, very different ways. On one hand, you have what you might call classic PTSD. This is what most people think of, the intense reliving of the event, the flashbacks, and hypervigilance, that feeling of being constantly on guard, stuck in fight or flight mode. But then on the other hand, there's this dissociative subtype. And this is marked by feelings of depersonalization, like you're literally an outside observer to your own thoughts, and derealization, where the world itself just feels unreal, foggy, or dreamlike. We're talking about two profoundly different internal worlds here. Okay, so the key to cracking this whole thing, to understanding these two realities, seems to be hidden in a small, deep, and incredibly important part of the brain. So, let's meet the insula. So what is the insula? Well, you can think of it as the brain's master translator. It takes all that raw data coming from your body, your heart pounding, that knot in your gut, the pit in your stomach, and it helps translate all of that into what we recognize as a subjective emotion, whether that's fear or anxiety or even calm. Here are a few ways to think about it. It's like the brain's emotional switchboard, or maybe the official interpreter sitting between your gut feelings and your conscious mind. It's this crucial hub that connects the body's most basic alarm system to the brain's CEO, the part that makes rational decisions. So you can see this little hub is absolutely critical for how we experience our emotional world. The big question is, what happens to it after a trauma? To find that out, the scientists behind this study did something just brilliant. Instead of giving the brain a task or a puzzle, they decided to just listen, to just eavesdrop on the brain's private conversations when it wasn't doing anything at all. And here's the game plan they used. First, they got three groups of people together: healthy individuals, folks with classic PTSD, and people with that dissociative subtype. Then they had them all just lie down in an fMRI scanner and do nothing. Just let their minds wander. The scanner then mapped out what's called functional connectivity, which is basically a map of who's talking to whom. Specifically, which parts of the insula were chatting with other parts of the brain. And what they found, well, this is where it gets really fascinating. These brain conversations weren't random noise at all. Instead, each of those three groups showed a really distinct, consistent pattern, its own unique neural signature. Okay, so first things first, we need a baseline, right? What does a healthy, non-traumatized brain's conversation look like when it's just hanging out? In the healthy control group, it's pretty much exactly what you'd hope to see. The insula has these strong, clear communication lines with the prefrontal cortex, the CEO. This shows a nice, balanced network where sensory info gets passed up to the rational brain, which can then decide what to do. The body talks, the CEO listens, and everything is managed pretty efficiently. But in a brain with classic PTSD, that whole conversation shifts dramatically. So, in this brain, the insula has pretty much hung up on the CEO. Instead, it's locked into this super tight, over-connected loop with these deep, ancient brain structures like the periaqueductal gray. This is the brain's most primal alarm system. So the conversation is basically stuck on one topic and one topic only: threat. And this connection just keeps that body-wide fight-or-flight response going and going, which, perfectly explains that feeling of constant hypervigilance. And this is maybe the most mind-blowing finding of the entire study. The pattern for the dissociative subtype, it's not just some slight variation of the classic one. No, it's a completely different neural conversation altogether. In this brain, the insula has cut the lines to both the primal alarm system and the CEO. It's like it's gone rogue. Instead, it's now intensely connected to regions in the back of the brain, areas that are involved in more subconscious, automatic, implicit kinds of processing. It's almost as if the feeling hub has rerouted its entire network to bypass conscious awareness. And that could be the very mechanism behind that strange, disconnected, unreal feeling of dissociation. So here's the kicker. These three patterns, the healthy, the classic PTSD, and the dissociative PTSD brain, they aren't just fuzzy observations. They are so clear, so distinct, that they could actually serve as a biological blueprint for diagnosis. Just how distinct are we talking? Well, the researchers fed these brain connectivity maps into a machine learning algorithm. And just by looking at the quiet, resting state chatter of the insula, the computer could correctly tell which of the three groups a person belonged to with, get this, 80.4% accuracy. Now think about what that number really means. That incredible accuracy tells us that classic PTSD and its dissociative subtype are not just different flavors of the same condition. They represent distinct, predictable, and fundamentally different states in the brain. They are, in a very real way, different injuries. And this leads us right to the study's own powerful conclusion. In their own words, these connectivity patterns may be utilized as diagnostic markers. This isn't just some interesting academic finding. It points toward a future where we can objectively, biologically, identify the specific nature of a person's trauma response. And that just leaves us with this final provocative thought. If we can actually see the unique fingerprint that trauma leaves on an individual's brain, could a simple resting state brain scan one day tell a doctor not just if someone has PTSD, but precisely what kind? And could that knowledge finally allow us to move beyond a one-size-fits-all approach and start tailoring treatments to the specific neural reality of each person's suffering? I mean, it's a future that this kind of research brings one giant step closer.